All right, I will call the Plan Commission meeting Wednesday, November 12th, 5 PM to order. Roll call, please.
Hey, Justin will not be here tonight. Jan,
Here.
David,
Here.
Stephanie,
Here.
Richard,
Here.
Tanya,
Here.
and Sonia.
Here.
Review number 2. Hi, Chad. Review and approval of minutes from October 1st, 2025 meeting. Have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve. This is Jan.
This is Richard L. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions, changes? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Number 3, review and approval of certified survey map, Katie Fassbinder. And I see that she is on. Hi, Katie.
Tanya.
Hey, Katie, I don't know if you want to just give a small synopsis of what you're doing here on the CSM so that the committee has an idea of
Sure.
why we're bringing this forward.
Yes. So my husband and I have moved and we are in the process of selling the property that we've been living on, which in total was 2.08 acres. We ended up being able to sell it, but we had to kind of divide it into 2 lots that you can see here. Joe Niles, the certified surveyor, provided this map for us. And so the lot 1 is 0.71 acres, and there is a natural kind of access point so that it would be an accessible lot to build a house on. And then the property lines have been shown where it would be divided into the second lot. We do have buyers for both lots, and we're due to close on December 5th with the lot 1 and then December 10th with lot 2. And the buyers are local families that we're really delighted with. And the adjacent neighbors are all aware of the property division because we actually reached out to them to offer them kind of the first opportunity to purchase it. So they've been notified of that plan.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I don't really have a lot to add other than it does meet size requirements and things like that. I believe Sarah was asked questions about water sewer, and then of course you can see that there is the street already kind of wraps into that lot. So yeah, everything's there for that infrastructure, and it'd be a perfect place to build a home.
Is it curbed up there?
Is it curbed up there, Katie? I can't remember. Is there a curb and gutter?
Oh gosh. I don't want to say and be wrong. I'm sorry, I don't know.
You're fine.
Okay. I'm just curious if there's the access is there for.
Yeah, Sarah, I see you're on.
Yeah, I think I was trying to think about it too. I know that there is to the property line, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't think there is because it's kind of been used as a little bit of a driveway already.
Right. It's like partially paved. I mean, it turns,
Yes.
if I
Into
remember
the-
right,
into
into
the
that
new lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
We'll have to obviously tidy it up or add to it or whatever, whoever buys it. But yeah, so again, I think it's perfect opportunity for them.
Any other questions or concerns? All right, I'll look for a motion to approve the certified survey map for Katie Fassbinder.
This is Sonia. I motion to approve the certified survey map by Fassbinder.
I'll second. This is Stephanie.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thanks, Katie. And gosh, we are going
Thank
to
you.
there.
Really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks. All right. Bye.
Number 4, review and approval of certified survey map Railroad Avenue property.
Okay, the property in question here is out on Railroad Avenue, just south of Shade Haven. This lot in general was purchased from the county by the city several years ago. I can't even remember exactly when. It was before my time. And has always been designated for development into light industrial development. The property in question needs to be CSM'd off due to a development agreement that the city signed with Chad Olson for his development out there. It's 1.7 acres, and as shown on the map. The map or the land in general was, and how we divided it was based on a concept plan that Veerbecker worked with the city on and the VDA on as a way to get the highest and best use out of the property. It's kind of an odd, it's got some odd topography on it, and it really slopes to the east, and which would make it challenging for sewer lines, gravity lines in general. And so they helped us develop sort of a development map for it that would get the most acreage out of it as possible, usable acreage. And so I just bring that up because this is all part of that plan and falls right in line with it. Chad, I don't know if you had anything out of it. It's a fairly simple map. It has not been reviewed by Lawrence Johns yet at the county. He, I guess, was away on vacation, and so Veerbecker is going to work on getting his input on it prior to council at the end of the month. But at this point, it is in draft stage, and I don't know, Lori, if you want to bring up the handful of issues that you identified with it.
Yeah, I just saw the draft this today, and I noticed that they have it listed as an extraterritorial in the town of Viroqua instead of the city of Viroqua. So the back part of this has got Nate as the owner, which needs to change to Justin. And the next page is where it's got signing off by the town of Viroqua, which wouldn't have to happen. And then we just have to have the common council resolution. So this really isn't an extraterritorial, but they wrote it as an extraterritorial. So they need to get that cleaned up too. So I can't read maps, but I know names.
She caught all the fine print, so thanks, Lori. And Justin's not the owner. He's, as the mayor, he would be, the city has ownership over the property. But otherwise, the certified survey map as shown appears to be what we had asked for it to be.
This is just the city asking for the map to be created. It's not pending a sale or something like that.
Well, the sale would happen after the CSM is created.
So it is,
So right now, it's just this whole sort of section here. What we call the 18 acres, or now it's like 16 acres. It's just one big chunk of land.
mhm.
And before we can sell 1.7 acres to Chad Olson, we
It
have
is,
to
okay. I think I
separate
missed that.
that from the rest of the property.
Is that who put up the storage units out there?
Correct.
Okay.
And it will be a series of, the frontage will be a series of small business units, kind of
Oh.
what they refer to as work condos. And then the back will be more storage units, but it is a little bit more diversity than what you see out on.
Is that plan already approved? Sorry, just
Yeah.
catching up.
Yep, that was
Cool.
approved couple months ago, maybe a week ago, something like that. A week ago, a month ago,
Yesterday.
1 month to 2 months ago. There we go. I'll figure it out.
I have just
Lori or Nate, this is Jan. Is this a good time to ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we approve this with those two changes needed, or do we have to wait until it comes back corrected?
I would approve it contingent on the changes required along with the review by the Vernon County surveyor. If you so choose.
I just have a quick question. Can you remind us, because you said something like Veerbecker looked at the site for sewer issues. Can you share what they learned, or
Yeah.
or what they propose?
So the general exercise is that because of the topography on this land, a good portion of this section of the property back here, which is not relevant to the CSM, was at such a grade that if you built back there, you wouldn't be able to get gravity sewer back to the sewer main because it goes down. So and this is again irrelevant to this parcel, they basically created a plan for us that extends like a small cul-de-sac road back there so that it would make it less distance for the property to go and to sort of build up elevation a little bit. But long story short, the point of all of that is that we've had a plan in place about how we would like to approach developing this land, and it's just a reminder that by CSMing this off, this is very congruent with that plan. Yes.
Okay, I'll look for a motion. Nobody wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. This is Jan with the recommended changes from Lori's desk.
Is that good enough for you, Lori?
So pending the updates and the review by the Vernon County Surveyor, is that what you meant to say, Jan?
Yes, thank you for that friendly edit there. Thanks.
Problem.
All right, well, I'll second that motion. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 5, update and discussion on comprehensive planning process and timeline.
At this point, we are heading in the final stages of the comp plan. Last night, we approved the historic preservation plan and the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which was the 2 other portions of the planning effort that we had been going through this year. Those were big efforts in and of themselves, and they have now been formally adopted by the council. So those are sort of done and out of the way, so to speak, with a little bit of like end of project, sort of housekeeping to do. So now we turn our attention to the comprehensive outdoor rec plan. What I'll share with you on, yes, thank you. It is not the first time I have interchangeably switched those, right? And so what I have up on here is what I would like to suggest to the Plan Commission is the general plan moving forward. So you will all have received a draft copy of the comprehensive outdoor rec plan. And so that first section there between basically the beginning of January or the January of beginning of this year through October, they have done their data collection, a lot of public engagement, put together the existing conditions report, which was a lot of pulling of data, a lot of digging into any data that's available to understand what's going on in our area, and then they've thus created the draft comp plan. What I have on there going forward is what I would, again, submit to you as a good action item. It's not written in stone. It will need to be a little bit flexible, and we can pivot as need be. But today, or in November, we're going to continue to work with the relevant department heads to review the plan. Myself, Justin, and Sarah are the most relevant department heads to speak to a majority of the comprehensive plan, and we've taken a first stab at going through some of these documents. Tonight, we're going to review more of it with the Plan Commission, and then after this, it sort of marks it off. We intend to do a committee of the whole meeting in December, where we're really going to ask the council to put their heads down, not literally put their heads down, but to have some heads down time, about 2 hours in a council meeting to really review what is in the draft comprehensive plan. That we have everybody's really busy. That way we'll have a captive audience, and we'll really start asking some of the tough questions about, what do you think about these goals? What do you think about the recommendations? What do you think about, are you comfortable with these? What do you have concerns about? And really just trying to get a true first pulse check from them. And then after that, we were going to take several of the elements to their relevant board. So number 1, the Housing Advisory Board needs to review and have it, I'm guessing at least 2 meetings, one in December, one in January, to really have some time reviewing the housing element of this plan and making further recommendations. Okay. Same thing goes for the transportation section, community facility section for the Public Works Committee. And then within the what's referred to as the utilities community facilities element, there's sections in there for Parks and Rec, police, fire. So those relevant committees should look at those sections of the plan as well. And then after we sort of get through January and February, we're going to hope to have a second
draft of the comp plan, bring it back to Plan Commission. I would like us to do a public input session at a Plan Commission in February to give the public another opportunity to come in and say, what do you think of this? Are we on the right path? Questions, concerns. That doesn't necessarily need to happen in February. It could shift to March if we really felt it was that we need more time with it. But then thereafter, we would look to have a final review that maybe incorporates any input received at the public input session in March, early March, by this group. And then you would then recommend that on to council for approval. So what I've essentially done is extended our timeline on this because we bit off a lot this year. We were building fire stations and we were working on the Hanson farm and we're doing a lot of things and we were working on 2 other plans. And I think there was a bandwidth situation where we just couldn't, it wasn't our consultants. And I want to make that clear. Our consultants did what we asked them to do and they were on it. It was us as a city collectively that just wasn't keeping up with it. And if we really want to come out of this with a comp plan that that is legitimate, that we are bought into, we just need more time. So I present this to you as just sort of a rough draft. And again, it's not written in stone, but seeing what the Plan Commission thinks is sort of the driving body behind this effort.
I very, very much appreciate this new timeline and think there'll be more buy-in and understanding. So thank you so much.
Anybody else have any feedback, questions, concerns on the timeline? David, Stephanie, Jan?
Looks good.
This is David. I don't feel like I know enough intimately to have a sense of whether it, how it all makes sense, but it sounds good to me. I have no concerns about it at all.
Okay.
I agree. I think slowing things down or like providing a longer opportunity for input is completely acceptable and appropriate. And frankly, it's a big deal, right? Updating the comp plan. We don't do it often. So it's good to be trepidatious with whether we're pushing approval just to get it done or whether it's done. So good job, I think, staff for making this recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. And just an FYI, when I talked to Kristen Fish Peterson, who's been our main consultant over there, I did let her know that I didn't want to exclude her from these conversations, but I did think it was important that the city take ownership over having conversations ourselves. I think sometimes, and I've seen it across different meetings, like the consultants get in the room and everybody's like, oh, okay. But we really need to take some time ourselves and to think on it and force ourselves to look at it and read it. So I told Kristen, and she's okay with this because I want to be mindful of our contract with her, was not for another 3 months of work. So I said, are you okay with us not pausing, but just asking you to hang tight while we go through 3 months of due diligence, and then you can come back in to help us with the, make the updates in between drafts and stuff like that. And she was very amicable to that and understands and said, yeah, that makes sense. It seems like you have a good pulse on what your community needs right now. And so the consultants, in case anybody wondering, were comfortable with this arrangement. All right. So with that, I don't need any particular action on that. I think everybody's just acknowledgement that it's fine is good enough for me.
Okay, thanks, Nate. Number 6, discussion and review of draft future land use plan.
Okay, so now that we've gotten the timeline out of the place, let's get to work and actually start talking about some really crunchy items here. The future land use plan, there was a draft sent out to the group that you received. Since that time, there have been some updates to it. Not a ton, but that is on the screen at this time. And so I was not intending so many people to be online, but I can send you guys the updated draft of this. Going forward, I had printed out a bunch of copies for us to mark up on. So the people in the room get the prizes of physical copies right now, but I can make these physical copies available to the rest of the group. Maybe everybody except for Stephanie, if they're around and want to pick a copy up from City Hall. And the reason I made physical copies is sometimes, and I think most people in the room agree with it, it's nice to just be able to go through and mark up a map with a pen, different colored pens to say, to kind of sort of test out what things look like on your own rather than look at a computer screen. But we'll have to do our best today with half our group here and half our group online. So, future land use map. What is it? Roughly, it's a much more general version of our zoning map. It is intended to inform a future rezoning process, right? Whenever we rezone or create a zone, it has to be in line with our future land use map. If we want to do something that is incongruent with our future land use map, we would then have to go through the process of amending our map, which is a process, and before we're able to make that zoning change. So the name of the game here is to generally identify how we would like to use land within our community and also extraterritorial in the future, and sort of anticipate what kind of zoning uses we are going to apply to these different parcels. Did I get that about right? Okay.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. So one of the things I didn't send to you, and I'm sorry, this was an oversight, is when we look at these categories, it is not, these don't relate to a specific zoning type. This relates to a category of zoning. So we'll see here under, not that one. Where did I put it? What I need to share with you generally what those categories represent. And this in and of itself is also a draft document. Sorry, I thought I had pulled it up. So these land use descriptions that are coming on your screen now are basically definitions of what those categories mean. All right. And again, this is important to know because when we're talking about what each parcel should be given as a category, and I'm sure most of you could have surmised this just from the description alone. Maybe it was a bit self-explanatory, but this is sort of, we'll need to work on these land use descriptions as well, but this is what the draft is for them. And I'll zoom out just a little bit. Right? So we got ag land, which generally means it's gonna be used for farming and maybe have a a farm building on it, for the people who live there. That's allowed, outbuildings, things like that, but it's typically not going to be congruent with a residential development or commercial development. Commercial generally, as we would know, and then I added these two types, which is sort of the flex commercial industrial. That's sort of what we're seeing in the Viroqua Business Park, right? And then sort of this flex commercial residential. If you look at the map here, you'll see that some of those things I've used to describe the sort of transition from downtown to the fairgrounds, where you see small businesses in former residential buildings, right? But it could also be something different where maybe it's like a Main Street apartments type of situation where you have 3 or 4 story building with lower level retail and upper floors for residential, things like that. And then so on and so forth. Planned unit development, those are just to outline, like, these were special categories of zoning that we created ourselves through a special process because they didn't fit within any one of our zoning codes. And then so on and so forth. Residential, we don't differentiate between single family homes, multifamily, 8-plexes, mobile home parks. Again, all those are captured within the broad category of residential. Any questions so far? Again, draft, but we'll continue to walk through it. And if questions come up on those categories as we walk through this, by all means, bring them up.
So people live downtown,
Correct.
but that's all red.
Correct. So, and that's a really interesting point. So ideally, we would change that to like a flex commercial business. And this is sort of what I'm trying to figure out and what we're trying to figure out to go along. The B1 district is a business district, right? And the majority of it you would say is commercial, but within the B1 district, we allow residential buildings. So just because something's necessarily a commercial district doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't allow residential. But that's where we'll have to really figure it out. But I'm completely comfortable if this group is like, well, why wouldn't we just call the entire downtown sort of a flex commercial residential instead of a purely commercial area?
Because
That's
the way
very
it's,
fair.
yeah, and the way it stands right now would have, would that mean somebody would need one of those, what's it called?
Variances.
Conditional use, if they were to, you know, want to have residential downtown, which is
Well,
a
a
different,
land use description isn't the same as a zone, right? So we can have zoning that has more like overlapping uses from the predominant base land use.
I didn't understand what you said.
So variances are inherently due to zoning rules. And again, these aren't necessarily zoning. This is like a higher level up than zoning.
Right, but you said this is gonna inform our future rezoning
Correct.
process. So if we, so we're not, by identifying it on here is not locking us into something later.
It could, and this is what's challenging. There's
yeah.
all sorts of ways to bake bread, right? And we can choose how we want to move forward with this in a lot of different ways. So we could say, this is our future land use map. Downtown is generally commercial, but within that category, it is congruent with a B1 district, which automatically includes housing. Right? And we're also, the problem with this, Tanya, is we're also going to be planning on doing a fairly thorough, I shouldn't say fairly thorough, but fairly thorough process of updating our zoning code. So it's hard to tell because both things need to be fixed and this needs to be fixed first, right? And so I guess I'm not disagreeing with you, Tanya. Sometimes I left some of this stuff because I didn't want to do wholesale changes. And then you guys are like, well, what the heck was it before? So this red area here on the future land use map is, I left it as commercial because I generally wanted to show as that's what we consider the downtown, right? Anything east of, I think was that Court Street? Right here, not Court Street. What is this right here? East Avenue. Everything past sort of the, what are they called? Tobacco warehouse. Everything east of the tobacco warehouses is really residential. Everything around and west of the tobacco warehouses is more commercial. So I was just trying to help indicate that on the screen about where I saw a transition happening. And then allow you guys to decide how you wanted to categorize from there. So I think you're on the right track. Long story short, Tanya.
Right, they're not complete catch-all buckets. So, in fact, our zoning code, when we update it, we might very well have like an overlay zone of mixed use that is meant to help transition the commercial into the residential, or even more likely the residential into the ag, right? Where we might allow a little bit more building on residential lots than we might in the city, right? So like all the gray areas, although there's no gray on the map, but like if you picture kind of the gray areas where one predominant land use ends and the other begins, most communities have a zone or some sort of an overlay of the zone to help bridge the two, because one land use doesn't stop and then the next one start the very next property over, right? There's always transitional zoning from one predominant use to the other. It makes sense to me, Nate, to have the like biggest buckets of definitions of land use the way you've laid out. To me, this makes a lot of sense. Because, you know, I notice we don't have a, I guess we don't need one. So the only institutional, kind of the tax exempt properties we have now are the schools and the hospital. Is that right? Other than the government use, like the county's properties?
So yeah, and good question. The way we've done government and institutional, because it's a slippery slope, right? It's like you call a private nonprofit institutional. And so what is on the screen here in teal are properties that are owned by the 4 taxing entities in our community.
Perfect.
By the school district, the city, the county, or the technical college. Those are the 4 taxing entities. There was some conversation about, right in here, whether we should like look at some of the private schools as government institutional. And then I say, well, where does it end? Like, where do we stop? Do we then highlight the hospital
Right.
as institutional building? And so this was just an easy place to stop by saying these 4 entities will be shown on the map as the true governmental institutions by definition.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. And then after that, I think everything else, hopefully at this point, is roughly self-explanatory. The only thing that is really new for almost everybody here is this sort of checked mark area. This is what's known as the airport easement. Because we have a hard surface runway going this way and then a grass runway going this way, these easement areas basically protect what are known as the approaches. And so nothing can be built at all in the approaches, or I should say in the airport easement areas.
Isn't there height though too? Like you maybe could, but
No.
okay.
So and Chad brought up a good point. So there's 2 different things. There's elevation restrictions and then there's easements. On the easements, nothing can be built. In fact, we had been talking about here some time ago about extending Brendel Lane, goes back past Tractor Supply, connecting Brendel Lane to,
Go down 1 south. You're on airport.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're fine. Go
Where
down.
is Brendel?
The next road. Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Chad.
No, you're fine. Right there.
So Brendel Lane, here we go. And because Brendel Lane would go through the airport easement, Mike Skildemer, airport director, is like, well, I don't know if you're going to get the Bureau of Aeronautics to agree to that. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's a road. And they're like, yeah, they get pretty stringent about it. So I still think there's ways that could be figured out, but it just illustrates the fact that when we say nothing gets built there, nothing gets built there. So you can't put tiny homes, nothing. And that's why these continue to, well, it's not a structure.
Farmland. You grow crops.
If Sonia, if you want to go out there and test the limits by camping out, by all means, but
No chicken coops, nothing.
so that's just an FYI on that. You'll notice here that there are quite a few businesses built within what is the airport easement.
Huh.
And I would expect that those either predated the grass runway or the rules changed, or
I wonder if that changed when they extended the runway. Maybe that changed the picture a little
yeah,
bit.
good
It
point.
was already there.
Yeah, good point. When the airport runway was
100 and some
extended,
feet or
yeah, quite
200,
a
I don't remember.
bit, which allows for larger aircraft to come in, which probably extended. If people, if they overshoot the runway and need to take off again, you wouldn't want buildings here. But
When was that? Was that quite a long time ago? You guys, I don't even know anything about the airport, but
Remember that? It's probably what, 15 years?
13?
13?
It was shortly before I got here and I've been here almost 15. So it'd be like 17, 18 years.
It's been a while.
Oh, so you're talking 2007, 8.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
It's
Okay.
back way.
I thought it was closer to the early 2010s. Okay.
So question, so when we were going back to the government institutional, so the land use map, we gotta be careful how we design that, because in the future, if we want to change
Mhm.
something, it's gotta fit in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just an example, I'm thinking of the old fire station that's
Mhm.
listed as a government, right? This is an example, I guess, to help
Yeah.
the committee understand. We gotta be careful on when we make these decisions is, let's just say the city did decide to sell that building someday as a commercial building, the old fire station. So you see where I'm going to that?
Yeah, 100%.
So if we call it government today, hypothetically, we couldn't necessarily change the zoning and say now it's commercial.
And that's an excellent question, and one that I had wrestled with, because I think this map is helpful to identify, like, there are institutional, like the school district building or whatever, but those what ifs, not only on that building, but also on the public works area.
Mhm.
There's not an immediate desire or ability to move, to relocate out of that public works facility, but it's in the middle of a residential area. So someday it may behoove us to get out of there and let that develop into additional residential. So again, the question, what happens at that point? So it's a good question for our consultants about how we can approach that. My guess would be is that we could set ourselves up for, in the event that this is no longer a government building, it would take on the council have the ability to take on the option of any adjacent land use, right?
The city I worked for, alternatively, we handled institutional use as a permitted use within, rather than a zone, right? So like as a current, like as a permitted use within whatever the, like in that case, like if that's R1 or whatever that shakes out to be in terms of the lesser dense commercial use and things, we might ask the consultant if we're better off using institutional use as a permitted use rather than a zone or land use category. Which is kind of nice because that also, like Chad was saying, like the opposite is also true, right? If we shed property and want it, and a developer wants it for commercial use, obviously we want them to have the flexibility because that helps us sell property. But if someone were to gift the city something and we want to make it a park or something, right? It'd be nice to be able to apply that permitted use somewhere.
Yeah, I think what is helpful for us as a city is that generally when we do this future land use planning, knowing where our facilities are extremely helpful. Right?
Yes.
So I think there's a way we can still show these on the map without them actually being categories in and of themselves.
Correct. I agree. That's a great idea.
I know Sarah's online, but one thing she's always talked about, and one thing Chad has also talked about, is having your critical facilities, the public workshop, and your fire station. Well, your past fire station being central within the city is very helpful and helps you understand where and to which direction you should grow. But again, I think you're right. I don't think setting them up as their own category generally makes sense, but we can work through that.
So
Just before we move on, sorry, Lori, did you have a question about that?
yeah, I wanted to focus on that Arena Drive area.
Yeah.
As to why when we had the PUD there and now you have flex commercial residential right in there. Was there a point behind that? I mean, we've got like the school area, whatever there or owns part of it, but then you got all of that in residential, but there's more than just residential there. Is there a reason that they went that direction with that area?
So you're talking about the Wild West days?
Well, the Wild West days, I would assume, is the blue.
This is
well,
the
that's
fire
the fire
station.
That's okay. So you
Fire
put
station, Wild West days,
Okay.
Silverthorne.
okay. As commercial residential.
And the reason for that is it's an interesting area. It's a really interesting area because up here you have the recycling plant owned by GFL. Across you have the hockey arena. And then to the south and to the east, you have residential. So it really is like the Wild West days is kind of sort of like at the crossroads of many different types of uses. And that East Avenue area has always been kind of goofy in that, where it's kind of like a hodgepodge of different uses. And so that's why when I went through this, I said, that's probably going to be set up to be some sort of flex commercial residential. I don't exactly know what direction it's going to go, but given its surroundings, I think it could go either way.
But I know that there's like the hospice place out there and then the school has their daycare there. So I was just wondering why it was all residential versus the flex.
Right. And that's all up for debate. A lot of this, I just put it out as residential because I was like, well, that's kind of what it's zoned as currently. But all of this is up for debate. And I can't say that there's a lot of parcels on there. I went through a good chunk of them and said, generally, this is what I could do. But there's certainly, you can get into the nitty gritty of it, Lori. And I think that's the exercise here.
Well, we did talk about this area quite a bit the other day and kind of went back and forth, and vision is hard, right? Like, what is the right thing? And I'd mentioned residential in one spot, but it's like, okay, do we really want to push residential that close to the recycling or whatever? So is it better to have that little bit of an opportunity for commercial, let's say, and then work into residential? Same thing with the hospice. Who knows what's going to happen to that, right? Could I can't even imagine, the opportunities So it may have to be considered commercial residential and let the cards play as time goes by.
Yeah. Well, I'll make a note here. I mean, generally what I noted is just like sort of this section here, right? That's on the south side of Arena Drive. It would make sense to me, as Lori pointed out, for it to be more of a flex commercial residential so that it could stay commercial buildings as they kind of are now, or if they wanted to transition to residential, they would have that opportunity to do as well.
So so what about the well house? City owns that chunk too.
Mhm.
Should that be color coded so we recognize it or not?
I don't think Sarah would want that.
Okay.
Generally, she doesn't like utilities being called out.
Fair enough.
I think what's confusing for me on this, in this discussion, is that we've identified and I think maybe you were speaking to this, Nate, the government and institutional on here. But there's also property that is owned by the government, like the city, but that's not identified. So I keep thinking that, like, those are plots that just have, in this case, just city buildings, although I don't know what that T-shaped blue one is up on Chicago.
Landfill.
Right, so there's no building on that. So it's confusing to me that it's not like the blue isn't designating like government. It's confusing. I think I'd rather see that the governmental, that it's just all zoned. I mean, I can see the airport, but
Right.
that we don't have a separate government and institution zoning.
Correct.
I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, we already we went through
Yeah.
that. I think there's going to be an exercise later where I don't think there's any way the airport, because of the
Right.
And the same thing with the landfill. Like the landfill should probably always be identified as like a government institutional area because you just can't build on it, right? And so that would make sense too. Maybe it can be a park open space in the future, but
Mhm.
it's kind of beside the point. But yeah, I think we've kind of noted that government institutional shouldn't be a category, nor should it be a zone. It should be a permitted use within a zone. It's just helpful to mark them out so we kind of know where they're at for this point.
There will be different versions of maps too. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Different versions of maps. So is it possible that the future land use map may not show those colors? Or
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
it
yeah.
does,
Yeah.
so that's the trouble. Like we're trying to look at an awful lot of stuff on one map,
Okay.
right? And
Right.
they
Can
may
I-
fall off.
Can I, and then
Sorry,
I'll
go
let-
ahead.
and I think just to follow up on my confusion, because it's not identifying undeveloped and potential areas, which to me is actually the more interesting like thing, right? So that's kind of what I expected when I think of a future land use map. Do we have a map that shows?
Yes.
And what's that called?
It's called the development opportunities map.
Okay.
It basically looks it basically looks at undeveloped or underdeveloped pieces of land in the city and calls those out specifically to show like, hey, what have we marked
That's
them
perfect.
for? It just isolates them.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
But it's important to know this because we have to apply zoning to all properties, right? So, go ahead.
One idea for whatever it's worth, but if, for example, there was a blue zone now that you felt was in a residential or in a commercial, you could instead have the color of that residential and commercial and have just a hashtag, meaning that it's a government overlay.
It's both type of
That
thing.
it's both.
It's just a mark. Yeah, that's
Yep.
exactly
Yeah.
what I was thinking, Sonia. I think you're on it.
And then when would you like, or are you still going through the maps? When would you like our comments or discussion on these maps? Because I have some.
If you have comments or discussion, that's kind of why we're here today, is to start
Okay.
going. So two things. One is we can talk about as much as we're ready to talk about here tonight. So if you have comments, I'm like, Nate, I don't think we should do it this way.
Mhm.
I have a list of things I would like to ask you about. But also I understand like it's going to take time because I just sort of like introduced this concept to everybody as a whole. And so I wanted everybody, that's why I printed these out, is for you to be able to take them home and say, oh, let me think on this a little bit more so that we can try to get it right and I can have an informed perspective. So whenever you're ready, Sonia, I can take notes.
So, similar to what Tanya said, the commercial, I feel like is already mixed use because there are so many residences in this red area.
Talking about the downtown.
Yes, so I think it's more clear if it's labeled flex commercial residential, personally, because there's tremendous amount of residential in that red area. Okay, then on South Street heading towards Mahoney Road, if you look, maybe can you bring that down your map? Or can you push
Yeah,
it up?
just 1 second, Sonia. Okay, what were you saying?
Oh, wait, backing up though, you could still have a circle of like a downtown area, like overlaid, but still have the color all be flex commercial residential. So it doesn't mean you can't pop out. But I
Yeah.
do feel that the use that it currently is mixed use already.
So one of the things that I wrote down is that certainly I think we need to call out the fact that the downtown area should be some sort of flex residential commercial by nature. I think that makes sense. And again, if anybody online, we don't want to exclude you from the conversation. So by all means, feel free to chime in and we can make space for you in the conversation. But I think that part of the conversation here is around density as well.
Oh, sure.
And so I kind of wrote like, does the downtown need to be described as its own category of use that really highlights
We did talk about
the desire for density
Got it.
in addition to types of use?
Wasn't there that one community that we were looking at so wasn't there one spelled out about their downtown and it was like unique
Right.
compared to?
So we can get more
I think
creative with the
there could be a
downtown.
different way to identify that, but I see where you're going. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll play with that more and we'll try
Yeah.
to find something that
Visually.
based on what I've heard from you guys and where I kind of see the downtown going, and the next draft will have maybe a new category around the downtown.
Sure. If you can move the map up, please. Or down.
East South Street, Mahoney. So
Sorry.
So go south, go north.
there you
Go a little bit
Right-
more.
right about in the
Okay.
center now.
So where South Street, where it's light green at the intersection of Highway 56 and Mahoney, to me, if we really want more housing and that road was built, I'm guessing to put more housing because there's fire hydrants and pump stations, et cetera, that we should mark that as residential, that area.
So, and I thank you for bringing this up, Sonia, because this is part of what I want to talk to the group about. Like, this is where we really start making decisions as a community.
Mhm.
There are communities who have future land use maps that includes agriculture. And if we keep it as agriculture, there's not a lot we can do with it,
Mhm.
right? It's not really congruent with a commercial development or a big residential development.
Mhm.
So I left this on there purposely to sort of force you guys to have this conversation about,
Mhm.
and Sarah and I have had this conversation about, given the fact that we're a city and that there's housing needs and that there's a lot of farmland around this, is there a need for us to hold back farmland from potential development?
Personally, I don't think so because this is already a small area for a growing community and there is a lot of land around and it doesn't mean it would be developed soon. There are very few and the people that own it might never sell it. So it does not mean it would get developed, but at least it provides an opportunity, I think.
I think that topic actually probably deserves its own larger conversation too, because there are implications to, there can be implications, as Sonia mentioned, even if they don't sell it, but there, even the perception of some sort of I don't want to say more. It's not technically like a green belt, but even sometimes when there's transitional kind of parcels being held or like a zone being held for future development, there's this perception of land scarcity and it can even impact property values. So I think there's like I know that that's a bigger conversation, I think potentially than what we maybe have time for tonight, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think, Stephanie, we need to broach the conversation a little bit further at this point because I'm not quite sure what direction to take that in.
It's helpful to know, I mean, just obviously all the decisions we make impact the community, obviously, even the maps and some of it's clear cut to me. Some of it is, you know, we can look at current use and we can look at future land use, and a lot of the zoning will just fall into place based on that. But I think if we're going to talk about anything that could potentially impact property values more so than just regular rezoning or redeveloping, I would feel like I would want a little more information about what sort of impacts our conversations might, or our potential map might have. And I guess that's something Kristen's team probably could tell us, but unless I misunderstood, but if we're talking about doing some sort of like a holdback of keeping some agricultural land within the future land use map as meant to be like a buffer around the city, or a buffer to, if we're using that to control growth, that does impact property values. So we should have a good handle on what that could be before I think we make choices like that. I'm sorry. Hopefully that was a little more clear the second time I said it. Not really. Okay.
You're talking about a greenway around, which some communities do.
Right.
Parcels that I mention, they're not connected to any planned greenway. So that would have been a whole nother conversation in the comp plan that nobody brought up, and that's maybe more related to the county planning of, do we create a green sort of belt loop around the whole city? And that's not on the table. Doesn't mean it can't be, but I don't think it was part of the county city interaction. So that's why, to me, these ag parcels are just sort of not, they're just there by default. But if we're actually having a vision of housing, that's where I'm coming from. We should change it.
The other could happen too, right? If we leave it as ag on this plan and the property owner wants to do something in the future, they can't, right? Because we've identified it
So that
as
limits
ag.
their,
So it could limit them.
limit their heirs and the value. Yeah.
Right.
And my thinking was that I think I took it a step too far, having just experience where communities do that on purpose, right? Like that's a growth control mechanism. That's not what Nate is suggesting. So I misinterpreted that. Like if keeping that egg is just because if it's egg today and we think egg tomorrow, and then that's one thing. But if using it as egg as a method to control growth, then that we should have a bigger conversation around that, I guess is what I'm saying. But right.
So just to reflect on what Stephanie said, I think the question at the heart is, what are the potential implications of the changes that we make?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. And that is, in essence, what the Plan Commission's job is to plan and to understand what implications of the plans that we create may have on the community. And I think what Stephanie may be asking is that she would feel more comfortable voting for a specific plan if she had a better understanding of what the implications could be. And that's where she's right. The consultants are there to help advise us. And it's like, hey, we had this question come up. Like, what does this mean? What could happen? What are the pros and cons of making some of these changes? And can we walk through that? I think that's a very fair point. And I don't think any of us in our room are, besides maybe Stephanie, given and Sonia, because of the realm that you guys operate in professionally, can really answer that confidently. And that's where we need to bring our consultants in. So I've made note of that, Stephanie, but I do think that I think the question mark that we have here is on there is I'll put residential question mark, and that will cue us to maybe circle back to this at a future time.
And then if you're making a note, like just clarifying, if it's this body's desire to be mindful of controlling growth outside of the present or the future projected residential area, right? If because that's part of what we get, what this document will serve as, right? Is potentially some growth control. What are the right tools? And is it the right conversation to have, I suppose, within this group? Because I don't know if they looked at that. And I didn't even realize, like Sonia brought up, the county's plan might even already talk about some of the growth control outside of the urban area. So
So the same would go for by Pine Street, south of Willow, because south of Willow there is opportunities for development. I know somebody that owns a house right there at the corner. He works at the school.
Are you talking about all three of those parcels down here?
Yeah, to me, that should all be residential too. Like if we're talking about the other ones, they should be in the same sort of conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
So
Like if it's identified as residential, does that then mean somebody can't farm that land?
no,
no, not at all.
if it's an existing use, right? It would be a non-conforming legal use. So people do that I think, for instance, up here in the 18 acres, I think that's zoned as light industrial, right?
Mhm,
B4,
mhm,
but we're still farming it,
mhm.
right? So as long as we continue to farm it for a period of time, we can continue to do so.
We just had this on Railroad Avenue to where they wanted to build a house on it and
Right.
they had to go through all kinds of stuff to build a house on their own property
Yeah,
because
that
of
was
the way it was
hard.
zoned.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're never gonna know the exact answer to some of this stuff. It's just, it's vision, right? It's best guess, you know?
Can we tag on to the previous thing that you guys were talking about with the green belt and maybe the comp plan is already addressing this, but identifying, I don't know if it's a percentage of space within the city boundaries that would want to, that we would want to preserve for green space so that not every single inch of the city becomes developed, right? So has that been a part of the conversations? I'm sorry, I have not had a chance.
There
to read
is,
the
when
whole
I read
plan
it
yet.
last time, I haven't read the most recent. We do have a higher percentage, like acres per residence than many cities.
They
But
talked
I
about
like
that
that.
last night.
They did talk about that last night
Okay.
and thank you, but also when you take the golf course out,
Oh.
it drops way, way down to like 5.
Okay, so that's a
acres
good
per
point. I
resident.
like
Yeah.
the idea of having in the plan like a percentage aim or a goal that we have. I don't know if it's a percentage, but
Yeah, just an
I like that
identified
idea.
land preservation within the city boundaries.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like future land use related, although it could be, as maybe perhaps it's related to like development. One of the things I've struggled with is about parkland dedication and things like that. The current zoning and sort of conversation around that doesn't provide a ton of direction on when you create a subdivision exactly. Well, the subdivision section does, but if it's not a subdivision, how do we go about that? And so I think there's some questions there, right? Because you could just say like one house after another keeps developing and then all of a sudden it's not a subdivision, it's just over time and developed. That's probably a little bit more unlikely, but I'll ask about that. Okay.
I'd like to bring up another it's the wrong color, but it also brings up that another development opportunity is where Prairie Wind is. Those of you who don't know exactly, if you see Lewison Lane and then there's a driveway, like right by the N of lane. Currently, right where his hand is, go tiny bit up. Yep, that is residential because that's where Prairie Wind, the house is. And then there's a house go down
It's right here.
where that light green is.
Oh, right here.
That is a house, so
Oh, I
that
didn't
should
even
be
see that was a light green.
residential.
I didn't
And
see-
I personally feel that clustering houses is smart, so I would make the property to the north of that Prairie Wind Way
Sure.
and that little parcel where your hand is. So that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels there I feel should all be residential.
And you just leave the soccer field area.
That 29
Okay.
acres is park.
Okay.
Just clustering development, and there's already 2 houses there. also where the word Lewis is, that there is some land that's not the chicken park, where it's more where the WIS is. I think this, at some point in the future, maybe the city could sell that land for more houses down Lewison Lane. It doesn't mean they ever have to sell it, but
The challenge with this map right now is that it doesn't necessarily do a great job of allowing, this is all by parcel.
yeah.
And so we'll have to work with, if you really want to get nitty gritty and say like half of this current parcel should be this future land use pass and the other, especially for some of the larger ones, it makes
Yep.
more sense. But we may also want to think about it for the same reasons, is by putting in future land use as park space or open green space, it does protect that from potential future development.
Mhm.
So I'll make note of it, but I'm not that familiar with
Mhm.
that portion of land.
If you see it, it just jumps out at you as houses because it's not an effective. I'll drive you by there. Chad can drive you by there.
It's such a nice one.
Or if it's hard to physically alter because of the parcel, Nate, like the limitations of the program, then maybe there's an asterisk somewhere. Yeah.
This is just down from where you live, Richard. Just down over your cliff.
Mhm.
There's also this little chunk of land down here, this 8 acres that people from time to time have asked about.
Which one? Where?
This 8 acres here off the highway, sort of the, what do we call it? Driving range, I believe, is over here. At least I still think it's a driving range.
Yes.
And then there's this 8 acres that's,
Billboard is.
I would
Kind of.
imagine so. I can't say I'm super as familiar with the south side of town, but that property,
It kind of goes, yeah.
it's farmed currently, and there's some struggles with infrastructure there, but certainly I think it's going to want to be developed in the
Mhm.
future. And so having that as,
It's like an island amongst development right now.
right. Okay. Do we, just out of curiosity, like this is where it gets interesting here, because this is actual Hubbard Hills, and then this is also part of land that is owned by
Mhm.
Cindy.
Yep.
I mean, could we reserve it as open space parkland? Sure. But we could also have a future land use plan for other things residential, right? And that's sort of up to you guys. Cindy serves on the project team because she was kind of spearheading the historic preservation plan. And so she was in on meetings, and she's obviously part of the council and was very diligent about looking through this.
Mhm.
And she had encouraged it as open space, green space, but that doesn't mean that we as a council or a plan commission have to say that.
Mhm.
And so I'm just curious,
To me, that's an island of opportunity for more housing, and to me, doesn't affect the value of the amazing Hubbard Hills, which is that triangle shape. So also,
can-
she never has to sell it, and her daughter never has to sell it. So
I'd be more inclined to support more housing within the city limits than with like on the perimeter. We already have services there. We already have sidewalk most of the way. There's school buses already go that way. Like,
Yep.
I'd rather, in general, we identify areas. We know we need more housing. We know we need more affordable housing, but we need higher density housing as well. And I think I'd be more inclined to support housing adjacent to current housing than spreading the city out further, because that also costs us in sewer and streets and gutter and school busing, et cetera. And again, like Sonia said, it doesn't mean anyone has to sell it, and it doesn't mean it ever becomes it, but it would be nice. I mean, part of what we're doing is not dreaming, but part of what we're doing is like doing kind of a wish list. And if someone were to take it and want to develop housing, it'd be nice. I think that's a great spot for it. So.
thanks, Chad. Okay, duly noted, Stephanie. Thank you for that. Anything else for folks right away? We are at, I didn't realize we were having such good conversation. We are at about 5 after, 10 after here almost. Anything else right away on this future land use map? Again, I want to give you time to really soak in and maybe have a harder think on it.
Would it be possible to, in a future iteration for our consideration to have, or maybe it's on there already, is like current park space already on there?
Yep, current park space is shown in green.
It is. Okay, thank you. Oh,
Yep.
whether it's privately held land or public. Got it.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep.
That maybe should be clarified though, because then people will have a misunderstanding. If it's private land like Hubbard and Prairie Wind, it's not city park. So I don't know, somehow it does seem like that should be designated differently.
Within the comprehensive outdoor rec plan, it is.
Okay.
So again, we have lots of different maps that show information in lots of different ways. This one is simply regardless of ownership.
Oh, got it.
Showing
What-
land use,
Of what is wanted or,
future land use.
okay.
So it's noting that here, fairgrounds, right, is, the 3 categories are parks, open space, or recreation. So this is currently the fairgrounds, and so I show it as parks, open space, recreation. This is the arena, right? Park Bowl, Eckhart Playground, Bigley Skate Park,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then over here you have the cemetery, which is kind of a weird thing to call a cemetery, is parks, recreation, open space, but it is kind of what it is. Washington, Prairie Wind. This is the VFW land, which again, I just have it there as that's sort of what it is, sort of what it's not, because you have the VF, because it's like an extension of what the VFW disc golf course is. So should that really be parks, open space? It's commercial, right? And so that's kind of a goofy thing. I said maybe it can be residential flex because there's also residential around it, but it's a definitely,
Plus the band shell.
yeah, plus 3 holes of the disc golf course. So I made note of that as well, but then you have the golf course. You have the golf course down here on either side of the road. Court Street Park, Hanson Park, Cedar
The
Meadow.
dog park's on there, right, Nate?
The dog park's not on there, and that's a good point. Dog park, Lori, help me out here. Is it right on, it's on Asbury. Is it right about here
I think so.
or here?
It's on the south side of that road. If that's the road going to the,
Yeah.
not on Asbury, the next one down.
No, up.
Well,
Where the R is.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
'cause
say on, it's
I
right on
can't tell the
Railroad.
difference between lines and where they just failed to
Right
put
there.
in roads. Right here.
But it's not, that's not.
No.
We'll figure it out. Either way, I'll make a note finding the dog park.
Okay.
Anything else from anybody on this? I know we got a couple more things I want to walk through. Okay, so 2 other things. And again, if we need to circle back, we can. Here's the future land use map. And this is another one that I want you to look at this is the extraterritorial map. So I had them do 2 versions, like what is the future land use inside the city and what is the future land use outside the city. This future land use outside the city is important because if we were ever to annex land, which is a very real possibility in the next 10 to 20 years, we have to be prepared for what zoning do we want that to be. And so that's another exercise that I would like you folks to undertake, is really look at the city. And this is something that I've asked Chad and Sarah and the mayor to do as well. They're working on their draft still. They haven't had quite time, but I would like you to start thinking about that as well, as like if we were to pull in property over here. So the school is generally over here, yeah. And if we were to pull in this property, what should it be?
Totally. Got it.
So that's something else to think about. Land use descriptions, I'll send this out as well. I'm sorry I failed to do that the first time, but you can definitely look at the land use descriptions that are tied to the future land use plan and figure out. I like the idea of the category. I don't like the wording on it, right? Maybe that's something you think. Open to suggestions, so start thinking about that, but I'll send that out as well. Tanya?
The only reason, can you give me an example of why we would want to extend our boundaries for something other than housing or commercial?
Typically those are the two, yeah.
Okay.
When we annex, people
Right.
want access to water and sewer,
Right.
city
So those would be
amenities,
really the
whatever it
only-
may be, and so that's typically they want to develop the property.
So that would be the only category we'd really be looking at for this extraterrestrial.
I mean, with rare exception, I would surmise so. I can't say I'm learning with you guys as we go, so I couldn't say from experience whether or not there's other reasons. I will say, like, if the VFW land was ever come into our fold, we would make it parks open space.
Well, and if you're looking at like, say, the county land per se, if we ended up with a bigger business park going that way or head toward Westby direction as commercial, so.
Right.
Correct.
We might need access. We might need to annex just to get access to something else.
Further away. That's a good
Right.
point.
Is there a map that has where the sewer lines end now anywhere? Or it seems like that would be useful to know while we're.
There's Matt online.
We don't generally share them publicly on maps, but for the most part, it's where all the roads end. And we have done like sewer shed maps of certain areas. So like of areas that we know are looking at development, maybe we can share those as well.
Or at least if they're not on a map, but in a future conversation when we go over this, if you can identify where you guys would be based on sewer, do you think
Right.
we should grow?
Yeah, and that's part of the exercise. It's a little harder for you folks to necessarily see it, a little bit easier for Chad and Sarah's of the world to figure that out because they have more of that information at their fingertips. So I would like them to have to take the first stab at a draft and then
Great.
we can share with the group. But that doesn't mean you guys couldn't start thinking about it.
Great.
Okay. Let's see. We talked about that. I did want to just point out there was conversation about the airport easement. And I just want to clarify that for everybody. So there's two types of restriction. There's airport easements and airport elevation restrictions. Airport easements we already covered. You can't build, period. Airport elevation restrictions basically say, depending on how close or far away you are from the airport, orientation you are to runways means that whatever buildings you build can only go up so high. And so this map here sort of helps indicate that around the airport, you have the hatch line, which is a no-go. And then the darker red is there's really tight restrictions on how far you're building. And it's not number of stories, it's pure elevation, right? And then as you get farther away from the airport, the elevations really diminish to the point where the likelihood of us surpassing those with the type of buildings we're putting up is going to be really negligible. So just an FYI on that to clarify it. And then if we want, Tanya, if there's no additional questions at this point, we could probably move on to number 7, which is the discussion review of the draft goals, objectives, and recommendations.
Okay.
Okay. So this was sent out as well. And as it was with the comprehensive outdoor rec plan and the historic preservation plan, besides some of those maps we talked about, this is where you're really going to want to spend your time. This is really where you're going to want to spend your time looking and reviewing and thinking and talking to yourself is like, are these goals that are worth pursuing? What are priorities? Are they well worded? Right? We've had conversations with our consultants about like, make sure if we're doing recommendations. They're not general enough, right? Like, I think in the outdoor rec plan, that one of the action steps was increase enrollment of park programming. It's like, okay, well, that's a good goal, but what are the action steps we take to increase that? And so that's generally how this is built is you start with large goals, like what are we trying to achieve? What are some sub goals or objectives underneath that? And then what recommendation do we want to pursue that aren't necessarily attached to one objective or goal or another, but may impact and help support multiple goals or objectives. And they are tied to, there's a section for this under each element of the plan. So there's a goals, objectives, and recommendations regarding the issues and opportunities, the housing. This is an area where the Housing Advisory Board is really going to have to sharpen its teeth. I don't know if that's a phrase, but really going to have to dig its, its hands into and figure out what makes sense to them. But that doesn't mean that other groups don't have the right to like weigh in on that as well. There's so much here, folks, that I don't necessarily feel that we have time. I'm not going to go through them one by one and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But similar to the future land use plan, I would be open to like broaching some of the topics that you want to talk about, right? Anything that's like, oh, we really need to think about this one, or we really should expand on. There's maybe not enough here. I'm looking for initial reactions, I guess is a good way to say it.
Which page for what? Mine isn't numbered.
It should be the second page, Sonia.
Oh, he sent out just the goals and opportunities.
Oh,
in the
I
email.
missed that. Okay.
So.
I printed it out. I'm just gonna have it with me.
This.
Mhm.
So if folks at this point don't have like immediate things that they've already penned in circles, what I'll say is that I would recommend that we sort of leave it here tonight at this point and just really encourage you. And I'm going to put this on the council as well when we meet in December, like review these, because there are, and I'm going to point this out, not to like pick on any one thing. Where was it? There was a conversation in here. I believe it's under facilities here regarding the landfill, right? And right here under recommendation, it says support county landfill expansion and evaluate long-term waste diversion options. The last one, I think we can all agree, like waste diversion is a good idea. Recycling 101, right? But as a plan commission, as a city, that's a hot topic of supporting the county landfill expansion. It's a very divided thing amongst our community. And the question for the city is that, should that be in our comprehensive plan as a recommendation or not? Right? So I just really want to highlight some of those things. And again, the committee, this won't all be on you guys alone. It will have to be like the committees are going to have to get involved and look at there. So like when it comes to public safety, is this sufficient for them? Right? Should there be, things in here regarding, and Richard and Chad will know this about, do we need to prepare ourselves? What action steps do we need to prepare ourselves for a possible addition of ambulance service or transition to more full-time professional firefighter instead of our current volunteer on-call model, right? Because we know that model is dying out. right? So things like that where we really have to look at these more intently and decide what we want to do. So I just throw those out there as a couple highlights, not necessarily looking for us to dive into those things right now, because I think Stephanie made this comment about another topic is like some of these things could be 2 hour long meetings in and of themselves, but there are ways that we can put it on here that says discuss and create a plan for, right? Like we're not going to figure everything out within this plan. A lot of what the plan says is what additional planning do we need to do?
Sure.
So.
Okay.
Change the word support to explore.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's a great idea. But that's where this group and some of the other committees really need to be thoughtful. Okay. So with that, Tanya, I did have one more, and I don't mean to rush it. I'm just trying to read the room and see if we're at a point here where I've hit you guys with a lot of information and given you homework. The last thing I have is a discussion review of additional elements of comprehensive plan. This is meant to just be an open way for you. If there's anything in the comprehensive plan that you notice that you don't like, or that you have concerns about, or that you really like, whatever it may be, it's just sort of an agenda item that lets you talk about the comp plan in general, but I don't necessarily have any talking points on this tonight.
So you're asking if anybody has any questions or concerns about, other than the goals and objectives that you just presented? Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to bring those up as specific items that we were going to talk about tonight so that when you were preparing for this meeting, you knew like, oh, he's specifically going to look at those. If I don't have a chance to read the entire document, I'm going to spend my time looking at those. But I also didn't want to cut anybody off if they wanted to look at page 35 and say, hey, can we talk about this map or whatever
Okay.
this is?
So does anybody have anything that they want to bring up regarding the comprehensive plan overall right now? Hearing none, we will move on. Sorry, go ahead.
I think you alluded that we're going to discuss this later, but I did, notice a lot of the zoning, for illustrative purposes only, but where there was a lot of R1 that maybe when will we be talking about the zoning implications of multifamily versus R1 versus?
So that's a good question. So did everybody hear that? It was Sonia was talking about zoning implications. That map that's on there is intended to show current zoning, right?
Yep.
And it's simply part of it is meant to clean up because right now the way the zoning map is, it's not by parcel. It's just kind of like this general brush that people took over, and there's certain parcels that have 3 or more zoning on them randomly.
Yep.
And so that's just intended not to say this is what we will do.
That's why it was so good, well titled as illustrative.
Right. The zoning process is a completely separate process we would do after adoption of the comprehensive plan.
Okay. You said that earlier, but because we had this map, I was just wondering.
Right. It's intended to just for illustrative purposes that you can sort of see it and say like, what is it currently zoned as and what is our future land use map and how much of a change are we talking? It's the juxtaposition of the two documents, Sonia, that is really meant to be the value.
Yep.
Anything further? Okay.
And one thing I will say, and just a reiteration, there is that development map in there as well. I think that was as part of the comp plan that does help you understand like where are some of the growth areas in town that we can predict. And then the extraterritorial map should help you understand like where could future expansion and annexation be.
It seems like the next plan meeting is going to be very important because we're going to all thoroughly read this and come back with comments. So should we set a suggested time now?
That's a good idea. Lori, do you want to do
Or
that
at least
now?
an
or-
option of times or?
Maybe after you adjourn because it's not an agenda item.
Good point.
So we'll adjourn and
Okay.
talk about general calendar from here. Okay.
Okay, anyone online have anything they want to add? Okay,
Nothing for me.
all right.
So just to be clear, we're going to adjourn, but before you log off, I would like everybody to look at their calendars.
So stick around. All right, we are up to number 9, period for public comment. Do we have any public on? Okay, then I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
This is Richard. I'll make a motion we adjourn.
This is David, all second.
David
Did you hear that, David? Okay, all those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks.
Okay, so in terms of the next meeting, generally, I would see sort of probably want to get it done before not too much past the week of the 15th through the 19th,
What
okay,
month are we talking about?
December.
Okay.
So
Just
we,
point of clarification, do we have another plan commission agenda or meeting on the agenda before the end of the year anyway? Was this the last one so far?
we do not have another plan commission.
Okay.
Would December 10th work for people? December 3rd?
Oh, I thought we were looking after the 15th. We're looking before the 15th.
Well, I would say that our last
it.
ditch, because otherwise you get into start getting into the holidays weeks.
Okay,
So the 17th,
I can do the 3rd.
is that going to give everybody, that's roughly 4 weeks, 3 weeks from today?
People aren't reading.
Right. You have Thanksgiving break. So while you're
8 hours
eating
in the
at the
car.
Thanksgiving table, have the comp plan with you, share it with your family, and get their input.
Can this be found on audiobooks at all anywhere?
Would you like to narrate it? Because
I heard a few different dates. Which one were you guys, are you still rounding up?
I think we were looking at Wednesday, December 3rd as a way to come back to it. And I do like the more aggressive timeline just because I think we need to keep momentum on this would be my preference. Lori, do you see any reason that wouldn't work?
I wouldn't know until I saw it on the calendar as to if there's anything else, but usually Wednesdays are fine.
Yeah, I mean, I have the calendar in front of me and there's nothing booked in this room down here. So I'll go ahead and put a hold on it. And if everybody would like to book it in their calendars for the 3rd between 5 and 6:30. Okay. All right. I think we're good then. Thank you, everybody, for being online. Jan, feel better.
Thanks.
All right. Bye now.
Happy
Okay,
Thanksgiving,
bye.
everyone.